For decades, the US military has been regarded as the most powerful war machine on the planet. However, when discussing America's military strength, most people immediately think of the Air Force dominating the skies, the Navy ruling the seas, and the Marine Corps excelling in battlefield operations. But what about the US Army? Is it still relevant in modern warfare? Or has it become a mere reserve force in the era of high-tech weaponry? For over 30 years, the US Army has rarely been involved in any major conflicts. Since the Gulf War, most of the conflicts involving the US have not required large-scale army deployments. With the rise of stealth aircraft, precision-guided missiles, and long-range strike tactics, does the US Army still hold a critical role in modern warfare? However, there's a little-known fact. The US possesses a hidden force nearly as powerful as the regular army itself, a force that can be mobilized immediately in times of war and is equipped with firepower comparable to the main army. So how powerful is the US Army today? The National Guard, a reserve force, or America's secret strategic weapon? If war breaks out, will the US Army still hold its #1 position? Let's dive into the details right now. In reality, the United States does not need an overwhelmingly powerful army. Before and after World War II, the army primarily engaged in trench warfare and direct armored confrontations. However, in the past few decades, the only large-scale divisional-level conflict involving the US Army was the Gulf War. While that was an impressive armored battle, victory did not solely depend on the army, it was heavily supported by the US Air Force. The campaign was a perfect combination of Army, Navy, and Air Force operations, making it impossible to attribute success to the Army alone. For the next 2 decades, the US did not conduct any other large-scale Army operations, raising a crucial question: what is the true strength of the US Army today? In recent years, the US has deliberately reduced the number of active duty soldiers in its army. As of 2023, the Army had only 480,893 active personnel, failing to rank among the top 3 largest ground forces in the world. The US Army is just one of 8 branches of the US Armed Forces. In the 2020 fiscal year, its active duty personnel remained at 480,893, with additional forces from the Army National Guard and Army Reserve, bringing the total number to approximately 1,005,725 personnel. First, let's talk about the reserve forces, a military component that can be mobilized instantly in times of war. Then, there's the Army National Guard, a force rarely discussed but critically important. Is the US secretly maintaining a powerful, overlooked military force? The National Guard is divided into 2 branches: the Army National Guard, which serves as the reserve force for the US Army; the Air National Guard, which acts as the reserve for the US Air Force. Many people mistakenly believe the National Guard is just a militia force made up of civilians or retired soldiers, lacking standardized weaponry, operating without pay, and only appearing during emergencies, often with a disorganized look. But the reality is quite the opposite. This is not a weak or disorganized force. In fact, the National Guard possesses formidable combat power. Previously, in the US military hierarchy, the Marine Corps was considered the 4th most powerful military branch. However, a new term has recently emerged, the 5th Marine Corps, suggesting that the National Guard has surpassed the Marine Corps, effectively becoming the 4th branch of the US military. According to 2023 data, the National Guard has a total of 336,129 active personnel operating under the National Guard Bureau. Currently, Lieutenant General Mark Sasseville of the Air Force serves as the Vice Chief, while General Daniel Hokanson of the Army is the Chief of the National Guard Bureau. By law, the Commander-in-Chief of the National Guard is the President of the United States. However, during peacetime, command authority is delegated to the governors of each state. Only in wartime does control over the National Guard shift to the federal government. Although it may seem like an unstructured militia force, the National Guard is actually a highly organized and well-equipped reserve component of the US military. Its history dates back to 1636, even before the official establishment of the US Army. So what makes this force one of America's hidden strengths? According to the latest reports from the National Guard's official website, they possess nearly all the key military assets of the regular army. This includes M1 main battle tanks, B-2 stealth bombers, F-22 fighter jets, and many other advanced weapons. Their rank structure, organization, logistics, and equipment are nearly identical to that of the active duty military. By its name, one might assume the National Guard's primary role is homeland defense and disaster relief. For example, during Hurricane Katrina in 2005, National Guard units were rapidly deployed, evacuating over 30,000 people and delivering more than 11,000 tons of aid. But if their only purpose was disaster relief, why do they maintain such a highly advanced arsenal? That's because the US Congress has assigned them a second mission, participating in overseas conflicts. From World War II to the present, nearly every US military campaign has involved National Guard forces. On any given day, thousands of National Guard troops are deployed worldwide, with total mobilizations exceeding 787,000 deployments. In the Iraq War, the National Guard accounted for 43% of US forces. In Afghanistan, this number rose to 55%. This proves that the National Guard is not just a reserve force, it is a battle-hardened military component with extensive combat experience. To simplify the US military structure, the Air Force, Army, and Navy primarily conduct offensive operations overseas. The National Guard is tasked with domestic defense and homeland security. However, Congress has set strict standards for the National Guard, ensuring their training and operational readiness is on par with the three primary military branches. While their individual combat capabilities may not surpass the Army, Navy, or Air Force as a collective force, the National Guard is strong enough to rival any military branch. This has led some to claim that the National Guard is now the fourth largest military force in the world, surpassing even the Marine Corps. If true, this would push the Marines down to the so-called 5th Marine Corps position in the US military hierarchy. With such a powerful force still officially classified as a reserve unit of the Army, many are left wondering, is the regular US Army still superior? If a war were to break out, which force would prove stronger? At the moment, the true answer remains unclear. The US Army operates under a three-tier command structure: Field Army Command, Corps, Divisions. It has 6 regional army commands, each responsible for strategic areas: Indo-Pacific, Europe, South America, Middle East, North America, Africa. Additionally, the army consists of 6 numbered armies: 3rd, 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th, and 9th Army, each overseeing military operations in their respective regions. Unmatched firepower and equipment. The US Army possesses one of the most advanced and diverse arsenals in the world, particularly in armored vehicles and army aviation. With over 4,400 aircraft, the US Army has the largest air fleet of any ground force in the world. Some of its most notable assets include AH-64 Apache attack helicopters, UH-60 Black Hawk transport helicopters, CH-47 Chinook heavy lift helicopters, MH-6/AH-6, Little Bird light attack helicopters, OH-58 Kiowa reconnaissance helicopters, a new standard in military strength. To truly measure an army's strength, it's not just about troop numbers or hardware, it's also about the deployment of advanced personal weapons and mobile air defense systems. As of 2023, a new benchmark for military power has emerged: how decentralized the use of high-tech weaponry is across lower ranks. The lower the rank at which cruise missiles and loitering munitions can be authorized for use, the stronger the army. The US Army was the first in the world to issue Javelin anti-tank missiles at the smallest unit levels. This proves that beyond numbers and equipment, the Army has a highly flexible and independent combat system, allowing it to remain among the most dominant land forces in the world. Additionally, the US was also the first nation to delegate the authority to use loitering munitions at the platoon level, making its army significantly more agile and deadly than any other. Compared to its global counterparts, US soldiers are arguably the most heavily equipped in the world. A dominant force in armored warfare. The US Army's armored units far surpass those of any other country. As of 2023, the Army operates 1,600 plus M1A2 SEPV, 2 main battle tanks, 300 plus M1A2 SEPV3 tanks, with a production rate of over 100 new tanks per year. In October last year, the US Army released test footage of the latest M1A2 SEPV4 variant. Mass production is expected to begin between 2025 and 2026, officially integrating it into the Army's arsenal. A direct comparison with other modern tank models shows the stark contrast in production capabilities. Germany, Leopard 2A7, 312 in service, approximately 100 in production. United Kingdom, Challenger 3, 0 currently operational, first batch of 148 still in production. France, Leclerc, XLR, 50 in service, total order of 200 still under production. Russia, T90M, 200 operational annual production rate of only 20 to 50 units. Compared to these nations, the US Army not only dominates in tank numbers, but also in modernization speed. Beyond tanks, the US Army boasts a massive fleet of armored vehicles and military transports, including M2A3 Bradley infantry fighting vehicles, M3A 3 Bradley reconnaissance vehicles, M113 armored personnel carriers, Stryker combat vehicles, HMMW-V Humvees, heavy tactical transport vehicles. Regardless of the metric, no other nation comes close to the US Army in terms of armored mobility and battlefield logistics. In modern warfare, victory is no longer determined solely by troop numbers. It has become a competition of technology and advanced weaponry. In World War II, a massive army could leverage sheer numbers to gain an advantage. However, in today's battles, without cutting-edge military assets, even the largest ground force would merely become an easy target on the battlefield. One key factor that allows the US Army to maintain its dominance is its combat support infrastructure. Since the 1970s, the US military has integrated electronic warfare units, but what truly sets it apart is its logistical and battlefield support system. Within this system lies a rarely discussed yet crucial component that few other militaries possess, the US Army Chaplain Corps. Their role goes beyond boosting morale. They help soldiers cope with the psychological impact of war. If a soldier experiences their first kill or witnesses extreme battlefield violence, instead of being referred to military psychologists like in other countries, they receive guidance from chaplains who offer faith-based counseling to stabilize their emotions. This approach allows soldiers to recover psychologically and return to combat duty much faster. The US Army's strength does not come from weaponry alone, but also from its unique combat strategy. When American troops detect enemy positions, they do not immediately engage. Instead, they call for air support first. Only after devastating aerial strikes have weakened the enemy does the Army move in to clear the battlefield. This is why US infantry troops are often considered spectators of war, since much of the heavy fighting is handled by air power and artillery before they even step in. However, the effectiveness of the US Army has fluctuated throughout different periods and battlefields during World War II. In the early phase of the North African campaign, the US Army performed poorly at the Battle of Kasserine Pass. Before that, its only major ground conflict had been the Philippines campaign under General Douglas MacArthur. However, after the North Africa failure, General George Patton initiated a complete restructuring, which significantly strengthened the army. By 1944, during the Sicily campaign and the later stages of World War II, the US Army had surpassed the German Wehrmacht, with legendary armored divisions like the 4th Armored Division decimating 9 German infantry divisions. Today, the US Army has gone years without participating in a large-scale conventional war. The Iraq and Afghanistan campaigns were mostly asymmetric conflicts where American technological superiority ensured battlefield dominance. This raises an important question. How capable is the modern US Army in a full-scale war scenario? With the US Air Force, Navy, and Marine Corps capable of handling most military operations, the need for large-scale army deployments has diminished significantly. The likelihood of a full-scale mobilization of the US Army, including the National Guard, remains extremely low for at least the next 30 years. In the current landscape of modern warfare, the US Army no longer engages in close combat as often as it once did. Instead, its role has shifted toward providing logistical support and strategic reinforcement. Despite this, the US Army remains the most powerful land force in the world, maintaining superiority through advanced weaponry, well-structured organization, and exceptional coordination in joint operations. While the US Army no longer plays the central role it once did in military conflicts, it continues to be one of the world's most formidable land forces due to its extensive resources and superior operational framework. However, as warfare becomes increasingly dominated by advanced technology, one pressing question remains. Will the US Army be able to maintain its dominance, or will it be replaced by other military forces? What do you think about the future of the US Army? Leave your thoughts in the comments. If you found this video informative, don't forget to like and subscribe for more military analysis.